You've heard the stories, right? Nazi Germany's secret wonder weapons, these incredible, futuristic machines that were supposedly this close to winning them the war. But how much of that is real and how much is just legend? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. Let's separate the fact from the pure fantasy.
And believe me, the myth is powerful. Just look at this question someone posted on Reddit. They're asking for a picture of Hitler inspecting a tank called the Monster. I mean, it perfectly shows you how this idea just sticks around. This image of a tank the size of a building. The thing is, that photo, it doesn't exist. It never did.
So that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Could these incredible weapons have actually changed the outcome of World War II? Were they legit game changers, or just crazy fantasies cooked up out of desperation? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at what was real, what was a total pipe dream, and figure out why these wild projects ultimately fell flat.
All right, let's kick things off with the biggest, most over-the-top fantasy of the bunch, the super tanks. These things were the brainchild of the Krupp Company, and man, did they find the perfect customer in Adolf Hitler. He was all about giant, world-beating projects, and for him, bigger was always better.
I mean, the scale here is just, it's hard to even wrap your head around. The P-1000 Ratte, that's German for rat, was supposed to weigh 1,000 tons. 1,000! To put that in perspective, a standard Panzer IV tank was, what, 25 tons? Even the Maus, which is the heaviest tank ever actually built, was only 188 tons. So yeah, the Ratte wasn't really a tank. It was a moving fortress on tracks.
But that's the thing, right? A weapon size is useless if you can't actually get it to the fight. And this is where reality comes crashing in. The moment the plans landed on the desk of Albert Speer, the armaments minister, a guy who actually understood logistics, he knew it was a complete non-starter. He took one look and saw a whole laundry list of what he called insurmountable problems.
And I mean, just think about it. How on earth do you move a 1,000-ton tank? It would have literally torn up every road it touched. It would have collapsed any bridge it even tried to cross. And forget about trains. It was too wide for any railway tunnel in Europe. And let's say by some miracle you got it to the battlefield. It was so slow, it would have been the world's biggest, easiest target for every Allied bomber pilot.
So here's the bottom line. Speer saw these things for what they were. Total fantasies, or as he put it, wasteful white elephants. He managed to convince Hitler that they were a strategic dead end, and in 1943, he pulled the plug. He canceled the Ratte. He canceled the even crazier Monster project, and not a single one was ever built. The legend is huge, but the number of actual prototypes? Zero. A big fat zero.
Okay, so let's shift gears from pure fantasy to something that was very, very real. A weapon that actually flew and fought. I'm talking about the Messerschmitt Me-262. This was it, the world's first operational jet fighter, and it was an absolute game changer, or at least it should have been.
Now, you've probably heard the classic story about the Me-262, right? That the whole program failed because Hitler threw a tantrum and demanded it be turned into a bomber, a Blitz bomber, instead of the fighter it was designed to be. The story goes that this one bad decision ruined everything. Well, that's a huge oversimplification. The real story is way more complicated.
The truth is, the Me-262 project was in deep trouble long before Hitler got involved with his bomber idea. The problems were baked in from the start. You had Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, who literally put a stop to all jet engine development back in 1940 because he thought the war was basically over. Then you had the engines themselves, the Jumo 004s, which were incredibly unreliable, lasting maybe 10 to 25 hours because they had to use crappy materials due to shortages. On top of all that, you had endless bureaucratic fighting, and get this, there was even another jet, the Henkel HE-280, that flew 15 months before the Me-262, but they canceled it. The whole thing was a mess.
And this timeline, wow, it really lays it all out. From Goering shutting things down in 1940, all the way to the first real batch of planes finally reaching the Luftwaffe in late 1944. You can just see how delay after delay piled up. By the time the Me-262 showed up in any real numbers, the air war was already over for Germany.
So in the end, yeah, they built about 1,400 of them, but only around 300 ever actually made it to a combat unit. Why? Constant bombing, no fuel, not enough trained pilots. By then, Allied air power was just overwhelming. The Me-262 wasn't killed by one bad order from Hitler. It was simply too little, too late.
Okay, but it wasn't all just fantasies and failures. There was one wonder weapon that was the real deal, genuinely revolutionary, and it would change how soldiers fight on the ground forever. We're talking about the Sturmgewehr 44. So what was the big deal with this thing? Well, it was all about the bullet. It was the first successful weapon to use something called an intermediate cartridge. Think of it like this. It wasn't a full-power rifle round, but it was way more powerful than a pistol round. This was the perfect compromise. You got decent range, but you could also control it on full auto. It created a whole new category of gun, the assault rifle.
But here's the crazy part. Just like the jet fighter, Hitler hated it at first. He heard new type of ammo and immediately thought about the logistical nightmare and just shut the whole project down. So, how did it ever get made? Well, the guys in charge got a little sneaky.
They basically pulled a fast one on him. They took the original prototype, the MKB-42, and just renamed it. They called it the MP-43, for Machine Pistol 43. This little trick worked. It fooled Hitler into thinking it was just a new submachine gun. But then, glowing reports started coming back from the soldiers on the Eastern Front who were using it. They loved it. When Hitler saw these reports, he did a total 180, and not only approved it, but he personally gave it that super dramatic name for propaganda: Sturmgewehr, assault rifle.
But even a truly revolutionary weapon can't win a war on its own. Just look at these numbers. The plan? Make 4 million of them. The reality? They barely made over 400,000. It was an amazing rifle, for sure, but there were simply never enough of them to make a real difference.
So what's the big takeaway here? We've looked at a total fantasy, a brilliant idea plagued by problems, and a real revolution that just came too late. So if some of these weapons were so advanced, why did they matter in the end?
It really wasn't about one single thing. It wasn't one bad order or one flawed design. It was the whole system collapsing in on itself. You had this obsession with giant, impractical projects, pure megalomania. You had Hitler and others meddling constantly, creating chaos. The bureaucracy was a nightmare of infighting. And maybe most important of all, the entire industrial base was crumbling. They were running out of materials, their factories were being bombed around the clock. They were chasing these technological miracles that the exact moment their ability to actually build anything was disappearing.
So, in a weird way, the real legacy of these wonder weapons isn't what they accomplished in the war, but what they led to after. The super tanks, a total dead end, obviously. But the Me-262, it kickstarted the jet age, and the Sturmgewehr 44, its basic design concept directly influenced what would become the most famous rifle on the planet, the AK-47.
And that leaves us with one last big question. What was the real cost of chasing these wonder weapons? Maybe it wasn't just that they failed. Maybe the biggest impact was all the wasted time, money, and brainpower. Resources Germany just didn't have to spare. What if all that effort had gone into building more of the weapons they already had, things that actually worked? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?